Greetings. I want to begin today by saying thank you to our illustrious um, Institute co-directors. Thank you to Dr. Wong, and also thank you to Dr. Ratliff for bringing us together this summer for a very productive UNCF Mellon Institute. I am going to just share a couple of slides in regards to publishing book chapters. And I have had a little bit of experience with this, and then I think the Institute allowed me to also kind of take it up a notch. And so I'm really appreciative of that. So I want to start by saying what I think is really helpful is to even think about what is your wish list in terms of publications, um, outside of maybe thinking about individual articles or a book length project. It might be helpful to think about ways in which a book chapter is a viable option. And when I'm talking about wish lists, thinking about what academic presses are on that wish list for you. For me, the wish list that I had was that I wanted to have something published by the University of Mississippi Press. And if you believe in the power of attraction or kind of positive affirmations or visualization, that was actually the very first press where I was able to publish a book chapter. So I believe in wish lists. Think about the hand of the editor, and this is something that I didn't quite understand until I started serving as an associate editor for a journal in Africana Studies. But the first experience that I had a very heavy-handed editor. And then the second experience I had a light-handed editor. And with the heavy-handed editor, I think in some ways your work is certainly shaped towards a particular audience, and you can be assured that there is lots of clarity and maybe familiarity in terms of the way in which your work is shaped. But with a light-handed editor allows your voice to remain a little more intact. And so those are some things to think about in terms of in terms of the hand of the editor. Also think about how are you approaching the idea of a book chapter? Do you have a new or overlooked approach or a new or overlooked concept that you would like to explore? And if it is multi-dimensional, then there is a good chance that you can maybe find some other people that want to contribute those diverse perspectives in the kind of book project that is put together by an editor. And then also, oftentimes, if there's just a desired collaboration, I think in the second book where I have a chapter, my mentor was the editor. She's somebody that we had talked about doing some work together. And so that's an example of a desired collaboration that it was just a pleasure to finally be able to, instead of working on separate projects, to be able to come up underneath an idea that she had and to have my work um, kind of appear in tandem with a vision that she had. In terms of finding the call, I would say that some things to really consider are thinking about looking for um, conference papers and proceedings. You may want to uh, look for places online. You are also going to find that if you share your work with your colleagues, that sometimes word of mouth means that the call will find you, which is what happened the first time around. Somebody said to me, "Oh, you work on Frank Yerby. There is a call. Did you know about this?" Matter of fact, several people said that to me, and I wasn't aware of the call that had gone out. And so word of mouth was really helpful for me. In terms of writing groups, the people who know generally what you're working on can also be eyes and ears for you in terms of things that you may have missed. And then also there are academic call for papers sites that don't just call for papers. Sometimes they are calling for editors. Sometimes they are calling for book chapters. And so one of the more popular sites that I uh, used to use quite often is out of University of Pennsylvania. They have a website that has calls for papers, and those are a lot of literature calls, but you can kind of tailor it to your specific interests in terms of looking at literature. And then also I would say that sometimes if you are interested in a topic, if you know there are a number of ways to approach that topic, that one of the things that I think is the part of the project that I'm working on now is DIY, like do it yourself instead of waiting for the call to show up, to actually put the call together. And so currently I am working on a book proposal that is going to bring in the perspectives of people who are really the first generation PhDs in Africana studies, and to really talk about their pedagogy and what does it mean to be truly interdisciplinary um, in a world that is filled with people who are really wedded to one discipline, and then how do you how are those first generation people teaching Africana studies in a way that is in some ways shaped by people who came through singular disciplines, but then in other ways being able to kind of find a new path or chart a different course for the next generation of students that they're training. I wanted to also say some things about what happens if you hit writer's block. If you are working on a project or if you've already identified an editor that is looking for your submission, I would say that there are a couple things that I would suggest. Certainly, lots of people use the Pomodoro technique, which usually goes like set a timer for 25 minutes or 30 minutes to work without interruption. And then you take a short break, maybe about 5 minutes or so, and then come back to the work and do another 25 minutes. And for some people that um, kind of forces a kind of discipline where if they know that they are going to sit there for 25 minutes, then some things start to come through and they find that productive. Um, I try to use an approach in terms of a writing prompt, and some people use writing prompts during their writing session. I actually use writing prompts at the end of my session. So when I am writing, I will leave myself prompts so that I know exactly where to pick up when I come back to the work. And so it could be a question, it could be something that I need to follow up on, but I will leave that prompt at the end of my writing for the day, and then I will pick that back up when I come back to it. I think also sometimes just to shift tasks, to work on another section. If you're stuck on a particular section, then maybe start working on some footnotes or endnotes and then come back to the body of the work. Or maybe you can switch to a different section of the writing and then come back when you have the momentum when you have the momentum going. Oftentimes people talk about stay away from distractions. And what I found is for me, I like to kind of walk away for maybe a 20-minute walk. And if I can walk around, all of a sudden, it's almost like there are some ways in which either that block gets cleared for me, or there may be an idea that actually starts to gel in a different way. And I don't know if it's just the movement, blood is circulating, but I do find that maybe just like a little 20-minute walk, if I am blocked, is really, really helpful. And then also, there are times when I use AI to remove a block. So for me, sometimes AI is helpful if it presents a new area to pursue. Honestly, more times than not, it also tells me what not to pursue, because when I see some ideas that are generated on the page, I will think to myself, no, not that idea. Not that one. You know what? I know where I want to go with this. And so even just using AI, I think for me, it feels like I don't really have those same kind of blockages that I used to have, where I have no idea where I need to go with some idea, that using it to either generate some new ideas, areas of departure, or certainly to rule out some things have been very helpful for me. I want to talk about maybe just a few best practices. I think that what I have found is that even at the proposal writing stage, when I'm submitting a proposal for a book chapter project, I try to create a lot of structure in that proposal so that I am making sure that there's something in there that is important background information that I know I'm going to expand upon, that my argument or my thesis, it may be a working thesis, but I know that I have a pretty good idea of what that is going to look like. Although sometimes as we get involved in research, we find that shifts, which is why I refer to it as a working thesis. To mention the methodology, and then to consider at least 3 points of support for that argument, because that is going to allow for just the expansion of that writing. Um, and you can expand a good structure exponentially depending on whatever the parameters of the assignment are. I would say the second best practice is to follow the publisher's guidelines, to adhere to the press and the editor's guides for style and punctuation and citation formatting. I tell students all the time when they say, oh, I rely on one of those citation generators. And I always say to them, it is really important to be able to know the particular formatting for the required style, because it is very refreshing to get something back with a few comments and just a few places where you may need to make some edits versus an editor who has to keep sending things back to you. And I tell my students all the time, editors are not going to fix your work. They're going to point out what is wrong. And so the closer you can get to getting it right, getting it on point, the first or the second time out, the better. And I think that on the editorial side, that also is appreciated, to really have a sense of what is that style guide, and then to be able to apply it. Now, there are always instances where you may encounter something that is a little different in terms of what you may see in the style guide, but I think it's very helpful, at least on those first or second attempts. And then to make sure that you request the chapter length, so that if somebody is looking for something that is 6,000 to 8,000 words, if they don't give you a length, then just inquire, ask, what is the anticipated length for the chapters? And then that way you have a range and aim for that range. And I think that that is always the best practice, to make sure that you are landing in the space that is allotted for that particular project. And then I would say last, to just be timely. And if you feel like you are getting down to the wire and you may not make the deadline, communicate with the editor and see if there is some flexibility, if the timeline, if the deadline will not be met, but certainly communication is key. So I just, if I can kind of hold up, this is the first book that I have a chapter in. This is Rediscovering Frank Yerby, and this is by the University of Mississippi Press. This is the second book on Diversity Matters, and this is by Lexington Books. And I have a chapter in here on oral history and how I use that in terms of my pedagogy in across a variety of classes, but I also teach an oral history class at Clafin. And then I have the book project that I am working on with a co-editor. And so we have put the proposal together and just need a little bit of time in order to kind of shop that out. And so I would just say stay tuned for that one. And to everybody that's on the call, happy publishing. Thank you.